Thanks so much for tuning in to the Sustainable Brown Girl YouTube channel. This show exists to provide representation for women of color within the environmental space, to share their stories, and to inspire all to be more eco-friendly every day. I'm your host, Ariel Green. This is where you can see all of the full video podcast episodes. So be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. Also, go follow us on Instagram at Sustainable Brown Girl. Enjoy! We are bringing back the pop quiz segment of the show. I know we have some consistent listeners, so this might be easy for you. Each week, I'll recap something that was covered in the past episode. It could be last week's episode or one from 2 months ago. If you know the answer, simply DM at Sustainable Brown Girl on Instagram, and I'll give you a shout out in stories. Got it? Okay, so in episode 75 with Alexandria Ashton, a sustainability consultant, we talked about how digital art can incorporate sustainable fashion. What was the tech platform that we used as an example? If you know the answer, send me a DM on Instagram and I'll give you a shout out. Today's featured Sustainable Brown Girl is Reza Cristián, founder and editor-in-chief of Sustain, an online sustainable publication focused on creating a diverse and inclusive space for people who are eco-conscious. Through Sustain, Reza and her team inspire us to give a damn and cheers us on as we make our first baby steps into this world of sustainability. Thank you so much for joining us today, Reza.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's go back to the beginning, as we always do, and tell us how your sustainable journey began.
Yeah, I like talking about this because I think
Yeah.
that everyone's journeys is a little different. And for me, I always like to share the story of, so I grew up in a pretty like lower to middle class family, Hispanic Mexican household. And, we would do things like recycling cans and water bottles for extra cash so we can go like to the movie theaters. I had like three brothers, so there's four of us. So like sometimes my parents couldn't afford like extra things growing up, so we would recycle like religiously. And of course now there's a nuance to recycling, like not everything
Hmm.
actually truly gets recycled. But we would go to the actual recycling center and like build trash bags upon trash bags of water bottles and cans. And of course I don't use water bottles, plastic water bottles, as much per se now, but back then I feel like it was just things about being resourceful. Like I like to call it being resourceful, and saving money was our way of being eco-friendly without really realizing it, and like thrifting
Hmm.
because we needed to save a dime, or going to swap meets to pay for secondhand clothes, and reusing plastic bags, plastic spoons, like all of that. Like I still do that now. I actually reuse like my foil and my Ziploc bags because that's what I would do growing up. So I would say it became from that, but I didn't know what sustainability meant until I grew up and came to college,
Hmm.
and knew more about like the more nuances of sustainability as what we know today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like a lot of people of color kind of have a similar backstory, because we come from, like lower or sometimes like lower middle class families, and we thrift to make because we can't afford like the new clothes, and
Hmm.
just reusing things so often. So yeah, that's a I totally relate.
Yeah.
So then what led you, since you have that background, like what actually led you to learning more about like what sustainability is known as today?
Yeah, I would say being in the fashion industry helped me. So like I loved fashion. I like originally wanted to be a fashion designer growing up, and obviously that's not my goal or dreams anymore.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be a fashion blogger, so I went to school on scholarship in New York City and Queens, and I really wanted to be a part of the fashion industry there. And I think going to school and meeting friends. So I actually met some really great friends that I'm still friends with today that
Hmm.
knew a little bit more about like fair labor and like labor costs, and like they were a little bit more into sustainability. And becoming friends with them, I started joining clubs like Earth Club and volunteering, and that opened my eyes to like what I know sustainability today. And I then knew like I'm gonna throw out some big names. So Celine from Slow Factory and Dominique Drakeford. Like I started hearing and learning
Yes.
about them from like freshman sophomore year of college, and that's like 5 to 6 years ago. So
Mhm.
um, I think it's just like New York City, like that opened my eyes, and college opened my eyes, and friends helped me get to that place.
Yeah. Right. Wow. So since you said you started like wanting to be in fashion, what kind of made you back away from that?
I would say I like watched True Cost, and like
Mhm.
joined in on the conversations that I was reading from like Dominic Drakeford and Celine.
Yeah.
Like they had their own like Instagram. Well, they still have Instagrams, but they had their form of like how they were spreading the word of sustainability. And I would go to panels, and I think I realized like, oh wait, women in other countries are not being treated fairly. Like this is horrible. Like we shouldn't be a part of this. And like there's even sweatshops in New York City itself, and specifically LA. I think LA has a bigger problem when it comes to that.
Mhm.
So seeing that it's not even it's alive and well of like labor disadvantages here in the U.S. It's not just something that's overseas. It's like it's everywhere.
Right.
I realized like how toxic that industry was, and I then wanted to start to stain the mag.
Yeah. Yeah, once you learn that, it is so hard to like turn the blinders back off.
Mhm. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So then now tell us about Sustain the Mag. Like how did you start it and like yeah, how and why?
Yeah, I would say I went to school for journalism and business
Mhm.
minor. So I always wanted to like, I think my main goal was like write for Vogue one day, be part of Condé Nast, and like, but I didn't like where Vogue was going. I have a video out there somewhere on YouTube saying like I want to kick Anna Wintour's butt. So there's like a lot of emotion in how I feel about the magazine fashion industry.
Mhm.
But I still wanted to be a part of it, and I was like, how do I be a part of it, even though it's not the best? So I started like religiously looking at like other online magazines or blogs, like Dominique Drakeford's had Melanin and Sustainable Style, and then there was
Mhm.
bigger publications like Refinery 29. And I was seeing like a trend that online magazines were becoming a thing because print I felt like was dying. People that did print that made money are like the big guys, like the
Right.
Vogues, the Vanity Fairs, um, and also like I thought if you want to be sustainable in the magazine media industry, then I thought online was the best way to go. So I think what I wanted to do was do what I wanted to do with my dream of being at Vogue, but like making my own dream because I felt like their covers weren't inclusive for everyone. Like my friends, like I don't see my friends on the covers of Vogue, and I didn't see that sustainability and environmental justice was being talked about in the mainstream sense. Like even on
Mhm.
Refinery 29, it was an independent, it was like an up and coming independent website, but it wasn't like, there was like maybe an article here and there, but it wasn't like
Right.
100% talking about that. So all of this together, plus being in the Gen Z space, because I feel like I was very young, and I also didn't feel like even the websites out there were maybe spewing towards the older millennials and not so much like the younger Gen Z who maybe can't afford big sustainable brands. So it was a mixture of all of that, like trying to be inclusive in terms of like where people's economic backgrounds are from, who they are, their cultures, and making it fun and interactive was like the main focus point for Sustain the Mag. And then yeah, that's how the story became to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you see a gap in the industry or whatever, like why not just fill it? And you have definitely done that. And I love seeing all the articles that you do. Like your recent cover with Jasmine Rogers is gorgeous. Like like you said, you don't typically see your friends or like your peers on magazines like that. And, being able to see sustainable people in magazines is amazing.
Yeah, that's one of our favorite covers just because it's so fun and bright.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's an awesome
right.
person.
Yeah. So tell us more about the magazine. Like, what types of, I mean, of course, I've like seen some of the different things, like you do wellness and fashion and like culture and like food stuff. So when you're like creating articles and stuff, like who are you typically trying to speak to?
Yeah, I would say currently, like obviously that pivoted and evolved for after 4 years because at the beginning it was
Yeah.
all about like trying to get people a part of the conversation because I felt like it wasn't as big, like sustainability wasn't talked about enough from what I understood from my like everyday peers. And
Hmm.
then now that I feel like more and more people are involved, especially Gen Z, I feel like they're even more in tune than I am sometimes, which is great because like they understand the crisis at hand. So I think now we're trying to find ways of interconnecting more conversations to the already existing conversations. So instead of talking about like stainless steel straws, which we did at the very beginning,
Right.
um, we're talking about like Nowruz, for example. Like we're talking about Persian New Year and like talking with Iranian environmentalists. We're talking about ways to recycle certain plastics that some people might not be as in tune. We're talking about like dismantling like the system in terms of like how to push for change with like in the governments and corporations, both online on our website, but also on social media, because sometimes they have different conversations going on.
Right.
And like even gaming, like how the sustainable industry is affecting the game, or how the gaming industry is affecting the climate crisis and like solutions in that area. Like I never thought that gaming and games, like video games, could be a part of that. So we're just
Right.
finding any industry, any thing, and connecting it back to like environmental justice and sustainability in a conversation.
Yes, exactly. Right. I love that. I've kind of had the same type of evolution with the podcast. Is like, when you first start out, you're kind of talking about the basics, but then as you see your audience is growing and not everyone are starters, in this lifestyle, you do kind of want to, you know, give them information too. So it's nice that, you're providing entertainment and also like really educating people too. So I love that. Now you kind of mentioned like how the magazine has like evolved, but I also want to know too, like, have you seen any shifts in like the media and how sustainability is covered by larger publications since you've started?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has been covered by many big publications. The New York Times, for example, wrote an article that featured, I'm sure, friends of ours that we all know, like Queer Bound Vegan and Christy and a few other
Mm-hmm.
amazing eco, creators and advocates and activists. So we're seeing now like big publications talking about it. Vogue is now talking about it more so than ever than they did
Yeah.
back 4 years ago. But I think because it's so mainstream, I'm noticing like people are having a hard time like what to believe because like now we're seeing like big corporations even talking about it, like Shell, for example, or ExxonMobil, like big fossil fuel companies that maybe shouldn't have a space at the table because they're the cause and they're not really giving back to Black
Mm-hmm.
and Indigenous folks that they have caused harm. So it's interesting because it's great that it's mainstream, but it can cause harm depending on who's holding the conversation. Like, is it being backed by a corporation that has like lobbying money and gas and
Yeah.
oil? So
Yeah.
that's where I feel why independent and nonprofit media should still be like at the forefront because then it's like if what's his name, Jeff Bezos's company is talking about it, his publication, then like Washington Post, then it's like like, how are you going to believe what they're talking about when like one of their main
Mm-hmm.
investors is, in charge of Amazon, which is like causing a lot of harm. So it's a very nuanced like topic, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, greenwashing can happen in the media too, not
Mhm.
just with, companies and their products that they're promoting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, since sustainability is like kind of like a key word now, a lot of people are using it, and it's popping up more in the media and whatnot. And people have been like some of our peers, I think Christy and Leah from Green Girl Leah like went to the, like different climate conversations and panels and stuff like that. And I know you were just at South by Southwest. So tell me about that experience and like how it's like received by normal people.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say it was a great experience. Like it was a dream of mine to
Yeah.
attend South by for since I was a young girl, young person
Yeah.
in middle school. So it was cool to like get to the Sustain the Mag. To me, in my eyes, I still think of it like a very small publication. We're not, New York Times. So it's cool that they, allowed for us to attend as press and get press passes so we can, because in reality, like the ticket prices for these festivals are really expensive, especially South by Southwest, because it's not just a
Hmm.
music festival where, you're paying like a couple hundred, you're paying in the thousands for these tickets because it's like a interactive from film, panels, music, events, all it's like all the festivals you can think about in one.
Yeah.
So prices are can be into the thousands, and I do want to say I'm thankful for having that experience. But the sucky part is we did apply for a panel to speak at South by Southwest, and we wanted to specifically speak about environmental justice in media and like what that looked like. We were going to have Deandra from Intersectional Environmentalists, and then we were going to have the founder of Ethical Style Journal. It's a Black-owned print um, sustainable fashion magazine based in San Antonio. So we didn't get it, unfortunately. But then hearing that, Shell did get a
Hmm.
panel, and
Hmm.
they did have climate change as one of their sessions. Like they have like different topic points of their panels, and thankfully climate change was one of them. They had a whole track of sessions for climate change, but then they have like Shao talking about their net, going net zero neutral
Hmm.
pack by like 2050. So that was a little
Hmm.
disappointing to hear, but
Hmm.
ultimately we are still glad to go and hope to make change for the next few years so they know that maybe we shouldn't allow for those big companies to like greenwash at their festivals. So there's a lot of change
Yeah.
that needs to be made in like all industries for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And it seems like it's moving there, but it seems like it's so slow,
Hmm.
so that is very disappointing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So what's coming up for Sustain?
Yeah. I
Future
mean,
goals, plans?
yeah, we have a lot of goals in mind. I think we definitely want a long-term goal of ours is to have a print, like coffee table book, maybe one-time edition. It doesn't have to be like a
Yeah.
monthly or yearly thing. We just want to test the waters of a coffee table book, something a little bit different, that people can read from all of our writers and maybe do some editorials. So that's definitely a far out goal of ours. And then we do our digital covers virtually, and we're excited that we're going to have probably three more coming out this year. So stay tuned for that. We don't like to announce who they are until they get published, but they are really fun to work with because it allows for us to highlight people you might not see in everyday covers or media, but yeah, we're just excited to have that platform and to continue that project. So yeah, stay tuned for those two projects, hopefully in the pipeline soon.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Again, like it's so fun just seeing all of your covers coming out and, just reading all of the articles and stuff that your people produce. Has it been difficult to find writers for the mag?
And actually, no, we have a pretty good writer base, and we
Nice.
are compensating now. So originally, when we started Sustain the Mag, we were all college students, so it was like really hard to compensate writers when we ourselves are like figuring out life. But life is being figured out, and we are able to compensate our writers, and that's been really great to see. And we hope to increase that compensation in a, as we continue to grow. And but yeah, we have writers coming to us like almost every week, which is great. And we
Yeah,
are trying to publish like 5 articles or more a month.
that's awesome. Wow. I love to see it. um, so like how can we support you? Like
Yeah,
aside from like following on Instagram and all that, is there anything else that we can do to help out the magazine?
yeah. I mean, definitely, we're always open for like if you know anyone that you believe and deserves to be featured on our covers, like reach out to us or like want to have an article written about them. So we always are willing to connect. We want to support others. Like we're also about like a community and like supporting other companies and brands and you know creators who are doing awesome stuff in this space. And then in terms of supporting us, we do have a Patreon where, and this is one of the reasons that helps us pay our writers is everything that we get donation wise or Patreon wise, it goes back to the people, like the creators we work with, our team, our writers. So yeah, definitely for anyone out there that wants to help us out, because media is not dead, but it's also hard to make money off of. I will be transparent
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would just say, yeah, follow us on Instagram and share our posts and amplify the work that all of our amazing team and writers are doing.
Yes. Do you also work with sponsors or advertisers?
We do, yes. So we do paid partnerships. We've worked with like Imperfect Foods, so some big brands, and then also some smaller brands, and we love doing that because we like to do it in our own unique way, and that's what we tell
Mhm.
brands. Like we want to story tell as long as we feel that they fit our mission, we will work with them, and then we'll come up with a great concept that's a little bit unique. So it's not so much like an ad. Um,
Right.
it's more storytelling for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Love it. And just so that everyone knows, where can they find you online?
Yes, so you can find us at sustainthemag.com, and then you can find us on TikTok and Instagram. We have a TikTok now, both at Sustain the Mag. And yeah, just feel free to email me, DM us. We are a little slow at responding because we talk about being more in tune with our lives and like we're not always working as much as we try to avoid that culture with Sustain the Mag. So be patient with us, but we'll definitely respond and reach out back.
Yes, yes, please go follow. It's, an amazing publication and they share a lot of great information. And it has been such a pleasure having you here today, Reza. My last question is, what does being a sustainable brown girl mean to you?
Yeah, no, thank you again so much for having me. And yeah, I just want to kind of quickly note, like, I love this question. I want to be very transparent with like how I feel. Like, I am a woman of color based on like my background being Iranian and Mexican, but I do want to understand my privilege of, my proximity to, my whiteness based on my complexion. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that because I think that's important based on how I view um, the world, I guess, through
Yeah,
identities that I have. But being a woman of color, because I still have the lived in experiences of being Iranian and Mexican and like what that looked like growing up, I think what it means to me is essentially like understanding those experiences and understanding the experiences I see my peers who are also in these communities, like what they face, and understanding the importance of like first like protecting them based on like what they deal with in an everyday life, and like protecting them in the sense of like making sure like I use my privilege for the better and like for the good of whether that's in my work, like with Sustain the Mag, or my personal life, and understanding that we need to like, so specifically like support, these communities, Black, Indigenous communities. So I think what I'm trying to say is that really understanding that like we need to protect and support these communities, because of my lived in experiences, I'm able to understand that and help. And that's where Sustain the Mag kind of relates to that, because I always am about uplifting and supporting others and their stories over myself. So that's kind of like where everything ties in together. Everything's like
Yes.
360 and it comes full circle.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and your description of Sustain the Mag, like on the website, is about like allowing diverse voices to be heard and being an inclusive space, and it most definitely is that. So I really appreciate you making Sustain and allowing for people to share their perspectives and just amplifying all voices, and particularly voices of color within sustainability and environmentalism. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you again. I'm so glad about being here and getting to chat with you.
Yay. Don't leave just yet. Click here to hear from another Sustainable Brown Girl, or click here to watch the full playlist from this season.